Hello, Colin. Welcome to the show.
Park, I'm so excited to talk to a fellow Coug who loves storytelling, loves marketing, like business. We also like to serve others. So this is going to be great.
I can't believe it. Folks, before I hit the record button, Colin and I were chatting, and it just turns out we started connecting the dots. And he grew up not too far down the road from me, north in Puyallup. I was just north of Seattle in the Bothell-Woodinville area, but we both ended up going to WSU. And then he reminded me that he was a receiver at WSU in the early 2000 aughts under Mike Price. So we've been able to catch up because I'm a huge Coug fan, of course. And I remember Collin Henderson playing in all those games. I just never put two and two together until right now. So it's just a delight to have you here.
Well, it's an honor. And let's just not miss that the Coug baseball made it to a regional this year, postseason play, first time since 2010.
Yeah, isn't that nice? I mean, in the Bobo Brayton days, I think I got that
Yeah,
right.
you got it right.
They used to go all of the time, but they lost a little of that legacy, and now it's nice to see them get that back somewhat.
So true.
Yeah. So enough about Cougs. Let's talk a little bit about you. You have a really interesting backstory leading up to what you are doing with mindset training this day and age, and your new book coming out called The Oz Method. And you've got this 5-part storytelling framework that I am eager to learn about because I don't know what it is yet. So before we get to that, why don't you let our listeners in on your backstory?
Yeah, I love that question. Like, you got to start with the origin story. And yeah, from Puyallup, I went to Washington State University, student athlete, did graduate school, started in fundraising. The Grade W Club, my role was to get former student athletes to pay dues to be members and stay involved. So I had some sales experience in that. And then I realized I just didn't need to be around sports all the time. I thought I wanted to be a director of athletics. Shout out to Jim Sturk, was our AD there, was a great mentor. But I had some family members that were in the pharmaceutical sales industry. So I was curious about that. They seemed like they were liking their job. So I worked at GSK Pharmaceuticals for about 5, 6 years, then got into device sales, managed 5 states, was a national sales trainer. And I kind of had some issues with just, I would say, confidence and self belief, stress, anxiety. A lot of people in the workforce and life, feel self doubt and stress. And I just never really could figure out how to manage that. And the irony, Park, is that we had two different sports psychologists at WSU that talked to the football team, and I never correlated. I need that. I knew I was stressed, but I didn't know to have a coach or a system or a framework. And I carried a lot of the same fears into sales. And I tell people I'm a recovering perfectionist, people pleaser who gets self-worth tied to performance. Think about running your ad agencies. I mean, you have the highs on the wins and the lows and the losses, and you attach your value to the world being lovable, being worthy to a result. And my blood pressure hit like high 150s, high 140s. I'm in my early 30s. I just had a rough patch, wasn't in the right role at work. I would go escape and watch movies to numb myself half the time during lunchtime. But when I changed companies, I experienced this in real time. When the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Isn't that the
So,
truth?
so my sales trainer was teaching me things around sales psychology, about around mindset, about mental skills, about neuroplasticity, about neurons that fire together, wire together, thoughts become things. He just gave me all these books and resources. Like, these business books are great, but I think you'll find a lot of awesome content to help you be a better speaker, leader, family man, father. The mental books are going to be huge for you. So I finally kind of had some resources and a path, and I saw instant results, started setting sales records, but I was healthier, happier. And I started writing blog posts about things I was learning. I started writing books. I've now written 8 books, and my newest one, The Oz Method. I've just been very curious about performance, how the brain works, how to navigate stress and fear, how to create confidence, how to create courage, how to create systems that you can duplicate, how to navigate pressure and fear. So my life's work has been about that. And in 2019, I was, coaching, speaking for a few years. I was like, I'm going all in. So there's
Hey,
there's the backstory.
hey, Colin, do me a favor. I'm going to do a little edit here. When you are talking, talk to the screen and not to your microphone. And the reason being is I'm getting a lot of popping when you turn your
Mm,
face into the microphone. So just kind of it's good if you're to the side and just keep talking at me, and that'll keep the peas from popping.
I need to get one of those.
Little screens, or you
Yeah.
could probably even move it away from you just a little bit. That might help
Mm,
too. And you're
okay.
okay. We'll keep going because it'll clean up there. But just so you know. Yeah. All right. So let's I'm gonna pick it up right here. Let me write my okay, here we go. Three, two, one. So the stress that you were experiencing is kind of surprising to me, and it shouldn't be. But here you are, a Division One school. You were, in the starting lineup, and you were playing against the big dogs out there: USC, UCLA, University of Washington, truly the dogs. And yet, that confidence that you must have and had to have played with did not carry over to you dealing with sales and speaking one on one. Do I have that right?
True. And I think you later uncover these things as you get older and you look at patterns and therapy, coaching, kind of doing some deep work. Um, I would say that, you know, I look at the word mindset. The mindset definition I teach is a conditioned set of beliefs that drive behavior. And a lot of times that conditioning is shaped what I call trauma, drama, daddy, and mama shit.
Trauma, drama,
Drama,
daddy,
daddy,
and
and
mama shit.
mama. So your adult, I would say, personality makeup is a window into your childhood. And I had high performing parents. My dad was a clinical psychologist, PhD, set every passing sales record at Washington University, CFL, was a professional racquetball player for over 10 years, traveled the country, was in Newsweek endorsing rackets, is in the U Triple SA Washington Softball Hall of Fame, like just a top performer, very competitive, very competitive. So I just kind of naturally associated when I do well, it feels different than when I don't do well. It's just a different experience. So I got, I think, unintentionally conditioned to believe worth, performance, success, worthiness, failure, not so much. And I switched schools in sixth grade when this started being more prevalent. And I was in an honors program and I got asked to read out loud in this new classroom. And I'm in an honors program. So smart kids I don't know. And at that time, I started connecting performance to worth. And in that moment, I started stuttering. And that warm blanket of shame really stuck with me. There's a powerful book, The Body Keeps the Score. Said differently, the issues are in the tissues. I subconsciously and nervous system wide would again associate, you know, that moment, fear and how my body responded. So, what you don't use, you lose. I developed a slight stutter in junior high and high school, even as a young adult, even at Washington State. Like there is some public speaking and I really avoided it. I really struggled with it. So that confidence really was really directly tied to a result. So that's where I was good one on one, but I wanted to speak in public. I wanted to be good in these arenas like sales, but I didn't fully heal that part of me. And I think everything changed or started to change when I went to speech therapy when I was 27 years old.
Just to clear up the
And
stuttering, huh?
or just to navigate that fear of me thinking about what other people think. When you do something well, you don't think about it. When you maybe you've heard of the yips in sports, like someone
Oh,
can't
I
throw the ball back to the pitcher
I suffer them all the time on the golf course. So
in
yes,
golf.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Where you can do something before, but there's a mental block that's stopping you. There's some traumatic event that, and a lot of times, fear is thinking that you're helping yourself. Anxiety is thinking you're helping yourself. A lot of times, it's holding yourself back. But for the first time, started doing some work. And I would teach any leader this is asking for help is a sign of strength. What does the warrior and the worrier have in common? They both feel fear. The warrior runs away, or the coward runs away. The warrior runs into battle. So I asked for help, started working on the fear of mine. And I started doing Toastmasters. I started showing up and giving speeches every
Great
week. So I
programs.
think, yeah. So
Tell us.
just facing my fears and like talking about it and doing therapy and so I think anything I teach about mental skills, mindset, um, sales communication, I've had to, I don't know, I would say suffer or go through it the hard way. I'm not natural at this.
Oh, you sound pretty natural right now, so you've done a lot of good work. Tell us about that story that you titled "The Walk of Shame" that you sent me, because I think everybody can relate to this freezing up that you experienced when you were working with a doctor.
But yeah, that warm blanket of shame. Yeah. So um a question in leadership is, how do people experience you? I was working with one of my sales managers early in my career, and we had a new indication in pharmaceutical sales. And we did this training and we did role playing, and it was my first call. And my manager, drove into town, and we're seeing this high volume physician. And the moment got too big. I put all this pressure and expectation on myself. And even though I could do it in practice, or I rehearsed, I knew the indication, I knew the messaging. The moment got too big where the pressure overtook my capabilities of speaking. And because I added pressure, here's my manager watching me, here's a high prescriber. And it kind of goes back, Parker, let's use your golf analogy. But you had a great, you know, time in the driving range, but your tee shot with your maybe um, people you maybe want to impress, or maybe you have a little bet on the shot, and your brain overrode what your body can naturally do. And that's where just practicing doesn't guarantee you'll have success.
So you got through that, and
Well, yeah, I survived that, but like I have different moments of failure where speaking or stress, and that's where I've learned different mental skills to help navigate that. And I'd love to share kind of what moments like that where I failed miserably, because not that I wasn't prepared, I didn't care. My body and my inner dialogue sabotaged me.
yeah. Well, we've got only so much time, and there is one moment I really want to ask you about that didn't get in your notes coming in. And that is the moment when things changed for you, when you said, look, I've overcome a lot of this, or I can deal with it a lot better. It's now my turn to go out and teach others how to do that, do what you're doing now and leading to your books and so forth. Can you take us to that moment of transition from fighting all this stuff to saying, okay, I can deal with it now. I'm going to teach others how to do that.
Yeah, so that I guess walk of shame back to the car was like I was so embarrassed. I was like, I need to find a different way. And I think doing Toastmasters and doing some of the speech therapy helped, but it kind of goes back to when everything changed. I think a huge intentional move we can make as humans for us to perform at a higher level is to put yourself in the right environment that is conducive to your strengths. Put yourself in scenarios that align with your curiosity, with your passion, with your skill set, with your experience. My last stop in pharmaceuticals was in oncology, where you don't get to see those physicians very often. So your reps of doing your messaging, your sales, your I guess your pitch, so to speak. I had maybe one of those a week, maybe one every 2 weeks, like real depth, because they were so hard to see. When I got into device sales, I was actively speaking to 6 to 8 physicians every single day. They wanted what we were talking about. They needed to align with a urology device organization that supplied their hospital or their outpatient office. So they wanted to talk to me, but everything changed when I met that mentor, Frankie Pretzel, who taught me about sales psychology, beat sales strategy, Read these books on the power of your thoughts, how to visualize, the power of self-talk. That's when everything changed.
And you did. And you've now written your seventh book. What were your first six books on? And what did you learn in the writing of those books?
Yeah, what I wanted to do, because I had 2 years of just deep study, reading 5 books a month, watching TED Talks, listening to podcasts, and organizing and synthesizing these high performance habits of neuroscience, brain science, applying them to myself. Um, I started a blog. Everything started, Park. I started a blog called Project Rise, February of 2016. That's how it all started. And it was me. This was before AI. I wrote every single word in that blog post. It was like 2 to 3 hours of really almost like a diary of like, I want to give to the world things that I struggle with, things that have helped me. And then the books that followed that really tied to really tools to be the best version of you, around mindset, around leadership, around culture. And the book before the Oz Method is called Quiet Mind, which again is just mental emotional skills to find poise, to find calm, to find confidence, to find grit and resilience, how to form habits. But I really think when I transition to the Oz Method, the number one driver of behavior is identity. I think the reason where I had stuttering or fear is my self-worth was tied to, or my identity was tied to a failure. It was tied to um, where I messed up. Think about your golf game. If you only see yourself, man, I'm a horrible driver. I can't get the thing off the tee box, or I'm horrible at putting. Your behaviors follow your thoughts and your focus. Energy flows where your focus goes. Maybe if you listen to podcasts, I'm not a morning person. I always forget names. I have a sweet tooth. I'm bad at directions. So it was just rewiring that identity of I'm present. I am worthy. I have enough intelligence. I have enough experience. I can communicate well. I am a good storyteller. So um, the books I've written before the Oz Method were around that. But I do have there's a chapter on the scarecrow.
Mm-hmm.
Scarecrow Wanted a Brain, where I give mental skills of influence.
And why do you call it the Oz Method?
The Oz Method is a parable framework inspired by the L. Frank Baum novel book written in 1900, later became the first Technicolor movie in the 1930s. And it was an experience I had as a national sales trainer working with a sales professional in Kansas who was about to be on a performance enhancement plan. And no disrespect to Kansas, I'm just following the book, The Wizard of Oz. As a metaphor, it's just a metaphor. I'll just follow. Here's a parable metaphor analogy. So he was struggling because I found he was only talking about himself and his product. So Kansas represents black and white, old, boring ways that aren't effective. The tornado who took Kansas out of Kansas into Oz, the Oz Method is now a new world. Put yourself in the world of the client. And when I was working with him for several days, I just wanted to use a metaphor to pull through that during that training. So the scarecrow wanted a brain. So I was like, all right, I got to change his mindset, how he sees himself. Research by Dr. Valerie Young, people follow confidence over competence. So skills of belief, of just confidence, like leadership and influence, the transfer of energy, how to get his energy right. But really, the other form of the brain is learning. So skills of curiosity, asking questions, context before content, connect before correct. So teaching mental skills of confidence and connection. And then the next character in the story, the Tin Man wanted heart. And I know you do this well, the business story. I found in influence, the research shows the number one powerful tool of influence, of behavior change and emotion is storytelling. Giving, the listener, the reader, the learner a sequence of here's the setting, here's the backstory, here are the character, here's the challenge, the problem, here's the growth, here's, a plot twist, here's the resolution. Is give a sequence of understanding character driven story. And the last character in the journey is the lion who wanted courage. And in public speaking, in leadership, coaching, in selling, man, courage is the cornerstone. handling no, handling failure, finding your voice, being authentic, executive presence. And the yellow brick road represents your habits, your systems. So I really taught, I just try to use this as a launching pad to teach different skills and of influencing selling. And in 10, 11 months, Scott was on President's Club, sixth in the country. I said, I got something here, Park. I'm going to package this a little better, a little cleaner, and start using this framework to teach people how to take the ick out of influence and the scary out of selling.
So you were able to turn him from being his
Turned him.
sales being all about him and all about the product to being all about the customer, your audience, which I profess all the time. I've got really two rules of storytelling that you can't break. Rule number one is your story is not about you. It's always about your audience. You have to place them at the center of the story. And the rule number two is your story is not about what you make, but what you make happen for that audience.
Yes, I
Get
love
those
that.
2 right, everything else
Yeah.
starts falling into place.
Well, another Nashville native, Donald Miller story brand says, "You're the guy down the side. They're the hero of the
Yeah.
story."
Yeah.
And to simplify from those characters into more of a, we call it public speaking, leadership, influence, sales framework. It's connect with curiosity, clarify with story, collaborate on a needs based solution. So that whole framework sequence, really, as you said, you want to put yourself in their world, empathy, perspective, curiosity. But I think another thing that the modern speaker needs today, if you're selling, communicating, leading, is boring will put you out of business.
Yeah.
Oz represents vibrant color, a different experience. It's collaborative. No one's going to listen to you just because you have a Zoom appointment. No one's going to listen to you and buy in just because you have a name tag or a title. So the number one commodity today is attention. Time is currency. And people now are wizards. They're Google experts. They have Claude. They have Chat GPT. The modern buyer wants fewer interactions, and trust is at an all time low. So what we want to teach people is like, bring in some props, involve the customer, make it fun, make it engaging, break patterns, make it different.
Yeah, it's performance art. That's what I
The
tell
word the
people.
word the word I teach, Park, is edutainment.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta entertain them to keep them interested, to get them laughing if it's appropriate, to get them feeling something about you and the mood of the room and that you are appreciative of them, to set that context, and then you level it up to logic and reason. Here's why we've got the ideal product for you to help you get what you want on your journey.
Yeah, and I really want to teach anybody who cares about others, who wants to influence and persuade for good, is quote from Mary Poppins: "Well begun is half done." Think about Mad Libs, where you have a story at the bottom, but you write down nouns and adjectives and adverbs. That's what the discovery phase is all about, is uncovering where they've been, where they are currently, where they want to go, where their challenges, who are the team players, what have been some things working, not working, what pisses them off. And then you take and collect those key words, points, goals, challenges, and you weave that into a narrative that you've kind of crafted from other clients just like them, from what makes you different from the competition, how are you aligned with them, what's the value proposition, what's unique about your offering or your product or service. But it's really tailored to what you've uncovered with that client.
Yeah. So take us to your 5-part story structure and how does it all play into what you do and the Oz method?
Well, I think any successful human needs to be a observer around patterns. If you can recognize, whether in nature, whether in your industry, whether in parenting and relationships, friendships, like, uncover patterns. Success leaves clues. And in my journey of uncovering the art and science of behavior change, that's what influence is to me, is behavior change. And what do the best stories ever written have in common? What narratives, whether it's parables from the Bible or a romantic comedy or a sitcom, a movie, a book, a novel, fiction, nonfiction. And I wanted to look at what are other thought leaders teaching. And I look at Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey. There's 12 parts. One of my favorite researchers, trainers on story is Kendra Hall, Stories That Stick. She has a three-part framework, normal, explosion, new normal. Um, this story brand has phenomenal stuff. I just try to look at everything, and I want to really unpack your research and how you teach storytelling. But I'm just like, all right, I think every story, as I piece them together and found common patterns, has 5 parts. The first part of any good story is you set the scene. That's step one, set the scene. When you set the scene is, all right, who are the characters? What are the stakes? What's the environment? Is there a backstory? And every great set the scene has two things. Number one is it's relatable. I see myself in this narrative. And number two is give me some details. Paint a picture for me. What are the colors? What are the sounds? What are the emotions? What are they feeling? Where they come from? And that just sets it up. So there's a clear beginning of, all right, who are we talking about? What's going on? But one of the most pivotal things in any great story has in the first, I would say roughly 15% of that narrative is there's a challenge, there's a loss, there's a threat. And what I've uncovered in neuroscience, brain science, and behavior change is the brain is more attuned to problems than solutions. Why park in every Disney movie, there's a loss or a death of a key parental character? I'm still recovering in therapy from the Land Before Time when Littlefoot lost his mom. I mean, come on. Like, why are they, or the film Up when the cute old man lost his wife. Like, come on. Like, Bambi. I mean, gee, many Christmas.
Well, think
But
about it. Our whole limbic system is our survival system, and it gets to call the first shots on everything and is constantly worrying in the background like, okay, am I in a safe place? Is there something that's I'm risking here by being here? Some crazy guy walks in the room and it immediately fires in action. Oh my God, what is that guy going to do? Probably nothing, but it's thinking, is this going to kill me? So it's only natural that all of our stories, without conflict, you have no story. Without
there's no
conflict, you have no
emotional hook.
transformation. Yeah.
There's no growth journey. There's no change, but there's no emotional reason to pay attention. The brain pays attention to threats versus solutions. I think a huge miss that communicators, speakers, sellers, leaders do is they don't set the scene where they get and understand and paint the picture where the audience feels like they're seen and they're speaking to them. Like
Yeah.
there's a lack of empathy and connection there. That's when I look at dimensions of influence. One dimension influence is you talk about yourself. The second dimension is the marketplace. But the third dimension is you are speaking with similar words and insights that aligns with the listener. That's three-dimensional communication. So if you go in just talking about self that is not in touch with what the other person experiencing, it's out of tune and what's important now, and they're just jumping into solutions, like you have no chance. You're not going to get either that sell or change the behavior. So setting the scene is just aligning the listener. They're the protagonist. They feel seen. They feel understood. You've uncovered and revealed some details that they gel with. And then problem, like there has to be a threat, whether they're aware of it or not. And then my favorite influence question, Park, that I've uncovered that has been so simple, but it invites collaboration. It invites deeper um, examining. This is my favorite question. If you can get to this, but you need to uncover goals and challenges. Once you've got that challenge clear, that question you can ask to transition to collaboration is, what are you doing for that? So using your golf analogy, Park, like your swing's not working. What have you been doing for that? So that allows me as the coach, communicator, his, you want to call it seller, gets to learn about what you've currently been doing. And what are you doing for that? It's what I call targeted coaching. We are we are zeroing in on something that is important to you, something that is valuable to you, and we're making you the centerpiece of the story. Now, the third part, we got set the scene, challenge. The third part, or the third act, is the growth journey. I love Moana. I don't know if people like Moana, but Moana was a wayfinder, and the heart of Tafiti was lost. So Maui was this demigod who was teaching her how to navigate the wind and sea and restore the heart of Tafiti. There's a growth journey. Luke Skywalker, there's a Death Star, planets are being blown up. He lost his uncle. He's learning from Obi-Wan Kenobi. There's a growth journey of, I look at the Hunger Games. Hey Mitch was helping Katniss Everdeen as a mentor through how to win the Hunger Games. So there's some type of, here's your problem. What are you doing for that? Let's learn some insights. Let's learn some skills. Let's learn some tactics that are tailored to your problem. And act four in any great narrative is, there's always, Park, as you remember, there's always another dip. There's always another loss. There's always another challenge to test the growth of the protagonist. And a plot twist. I see dead people. There's always something that maybe we didn't see coming. Or when Harry met Sally, they had sex and it got weird. So there's this fourth act where it's, I call your face your fear moment, where the protagonist has to go back to that original challenge. And it's a higher stakes moment. Luke Skywalker had to, in the X-Wing, he heard the voice of Obi-Wan, let go, Luke. He moved the technological device and used the Force to shoot whatever that was. It was like a Pac-Man pellet down the whatever. And then the fifth act is, there's a resolution. Like there's either a solution or, a triumph or a tragedy that we can learn from. One of my favorite stories is Where the Red Fern Grows. You know, uh, little Anne and Dan, like one of them died and the other one died because of a heartache. Like that was companionship. Like there's a learning done in that process. So there's the 5 parts.
Where did you come up with these 5 parts, or where did you pull them from?
But just studying all the different works, all the different, from the Greeks to Joseph Campbell to the other, resources I reference. And that's part of my, I think, joy as I would call myself an artist, is I've done just under 300 podcast episodes. I've written out 8 books. I've written hundreds of blog posts. I want to look at all the information, and I've found this to be true in art. Amateurs add, experts remove. And I don't want to be a cover band. I want to make my own music that makes sense to me. I want to play the chords and the harmonies that makes music make sense. I know you did music too, at Washington State.
Composition theory major, yeah.
Yeah, I want to like find like the harmonies and the different chords that are most effective, and then teach it in a way that makes sense to me. Like I feel like I'm more valuable as coming up with my structure versus I'm a Tony Robbins certified speaker. I'm a John C. Maxwell certified coach. I would rather research what the different thought leaders are saying and condense it into a way that makes sense to me that I can also teach.
What will people take away from the Oz method?
I think the biggest feedback I've received, I did a pilot program with the company HubSpot. That's a CRM very similar to Salesforce, where those who don't know, it's a platform where you can collect information from your clients, customers. It's the one-stop shop for call reporting and funnel. We took 3 of their sales teams out of 50 and put them through the Oz method, at least the early phasing of depth of discovery, connection, curiosity, the power of storytelling. In several months, they were number 1 and number 2 in the nation out of 50 of deeper in discovery, deeper curiosity, don't assume, weaving that in, and believing that you have a good story, believing you're capable, and weaving in a story that connects the dots that positions you as a collaborator. We're on the same team. People don't like to be sold, but they love to buy. Your depth of discovery will mirror your deal size. And I call this the growth inverse. In nature, height mirrors depth. So your conversations, being in proximity, understanding, empathy, that depth, truth, vulnerability will mirror your growth. Your growth mirrors your depth. So what you're going to get is tools that go deep, better understand yourself, better believe in yourself. In the performance world, psychologists call this expectancy theory. You get what you expect. So if you expect, oh, this is just a little sample drop, or we'll probably only get the lowest offer of our offering. No, you get what you expect. So take that pressure away and be curious. Connect before correct. Weave in storytelling systems that have been around for thousands of years. I respect everyone's belief on religion, but in the Christian world, Jesus, as God on earth, he spoke 7% in parables,
Mm-hmm.
in storytelling. So, and there's just a ton of research how the number one lever of influence to create emotion and behavior change is storytelling. Find some better systems to weave in your story, short story, origin story, why story. Look at the patterns of story, how to tell your story, and then how to have the courage to tell your story and to collaborate on that.
Well, Collin, are you ready to learn a new 3-word story structure?
Yes. Give it to
I
me.
I call it the and, but, therefore. I learned it from my good friend, Dr. Randy Olson, Harvard PhD evolutionary biologist, gives up tenure, goes to USC Film School, graduates, produces 3 documentaries on climate change and global warming. But really, the body of his work was teaching scientists and academics how to take their complex messages and make them simple through these 3 words of and, but, therefore, which also represent Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, setup, problem, resolution. And so I had sent you earlier today the brand narrative assessment and story strategy for your brand, as I do with all my guests coming on. And let me just read for you the ABT statement, which is absolute narrative structure of setup, problem, resolution for your number one audience, which the genie says is sales leaders and revenue teams. Is that accurate? Is that your number
Mm-hmm.
one audience?
Mm-hmm.
So it starts with the and statement of agreement, setting the scene, and it's told from your reader's point of view, your audience's, your prospect's point of view. It reads, as a sales leader driving revenue performance, you want a team that executes with confidence and composure in every high stakes moment. And if your people bring the psychological readiness of elite athletes to every pipeline review, board presentation, and critical close, then the results then the results they are capable of will become the results they actually deliver. It's a little bit wordy, but it's just building a foundation there of that's our statement of agreement. So, Collin, does that get you nodding? Yes, that's what I'm trying to help these people achieve.
Well, you phrased 2 words together, psychological readiness, that I think connected to, what sales leaders or leaders are looking for. A great question I like to ask. Give me the traits of your top producers. I always say things like belief, resilience, confidence, poise, drive. And it's like, well, what are you doing to train that? They're not. So, but you're kind of weaving it together. The audience who looks like this, and they're looking for this.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
we call that the statement of agreement because all you are trying to do is to get your audience, your prospect to nod in agreement, saying, yeah, Collin, you've done your homework. You understand who I am and you appreciate what I want and why that's important to me. Now, plot twist. You throw in the conflict. That's the word but, the number one trigger word in the English language. But you feel frustrated and stuck, 2 emotions right away, because despite the training certifications, the best in class tools, and the talent you have fought hard to build, performance still collapses exactly when it matters most. Period. So you set it up. Here's what we all want, that shared statement of agreement, but you don't have it because of this major problem, which then leads to the therefore statement of consequence, the resolution, the act three, the close. Therefore, your team can access and master the mental performance methodology that separates elite athletes from everyone else, building the psychological foundation for consistent confidence, composure under fire, and execution precision in exactly the moments where revenue is won or lost. Now we introduce your brand through the Oz method. Collin Henderson's performance psychology framework specifically engineered for the demands of the revenue professional. So that
No,
is the
that's yeah,
three-act
solid.
structure of and, but, therefore. And it speaks to that pattern-seeking, problem-solving, decision-making, limbic buying brain, the amygdala, the hippocampus, where all of our decisions are made, and then it levels it up to the logic, reasoned, executive functioning brain by how do we do that? And that is when you introduce the offer.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with that at all.
How, from what the genie saw, and again, I ran it this morning, and I apologize. I usually send this several days in advance so the guest gets a chance to review it. But I gave it your website and your new book, and in about 10 minutes, it developed the whole assessment and your overall narrative strategy. How does that and but therefore help kind of define the foundational story for your number one audience of sales leaders and revenue teams?
Well, there's a yes, and I do like the improv structure around accepting, agreeing, and building off of it. Is for sure 80% plus of leaders that have liked my work have some sort of a sports affinity or passion or background, and that's my background. And if I'm living authentically, I mean, I've played in a Rose Bowl, I've played in the Horseshoe, 100,000 people, um, baseball as well. But what we've also found in the corporate workplace, Park, is there's also, because there's a lot of sports speakers, that people want more diversity and they want more inclusion of the arts and different perspectives. So sometimes I fight leading with the sports experience because it alienates some populations where they want more inclusion and diversity. So the and I guess is the psychological readiness of elite athletes in these pressure situations. That's what I need to kind of
Well, and my argument to that would be, Colin, from a branding perspective, is own it. Don't try to sound like everybody else, because very few speakers and mindset coaches in your realm can speak to your experience on, the highest level of sports playing fields and so forth. And if it does alienate some people, maybe that's okay. Maybe you don't have to be for
well,
everyone.
the other thing too is we have 4 daughters, and I did ballet as a kid. I did choir for 7 years. I actually connected more to the arts than I did sports. I was just a good athlete, and I'm a writer. So I feel like I wouldn't say
Interesting.
I love both worlds.
The art of sport.
Yeah,
But
maybe. No, but I do think, yeah, I think I really like, that's a great summary. I appreciate the and, but, therefore, the setup problem, the resolution, it kinda
yeah.
makes things simple, and I like things in threes too.
Well, and I scrolled down to your unique value proposition that the genie came up with. Do you have a UVP that you typically use that becomes the focus of your messaging?
Yeah, I've like it said in the Genie summary, there's very few people in this industry that can teach the mental skills, the psychology of peak performance with sales experience, with how to persuade. 'Cause I've lived high level pressure, sports mindset. I'm very well researched in that. And I've also had lots of sales experience. So
Mhm.
very few can blend the mindset teaching with the sales excellence.
So it says here, unique value proposition, and I did not know that about you with the arts before you just mentioned it right now. It says sales psychology beats sales strategy, period. perform with peace,
I
period.
saw that, and
Which
I
is kind of
do. Yeah.
interesting, that whole performance concept, especially if you relate it to the arts and sports.
Well, the opening story in the Oz method is around our national sales director of North America, VP. Is we had a conversation like I should have got my master's in psychology, and he paraphrased. I've adopted. I kind of tweaked it, but sales psychology beats sales strategy. Sales psychology, and I've kind of I won't say branded that, but that is a message that when
Mhm.
I have meetings with sales directors, VPs, people who run national sales meetings. It's like you can bring a motivational speaker or a sales coach, but if they don't believe, if they don't have tools to navigate uncertainty and imposter thoughts, failure, have how to quickly recover, the psychological readiness, taking your word, um, doesn't matter how good their pitch is. So sales psychology will beat sales strategy. You never outperform your self image.
Yeah. No, it totally makes sense. And as I go through and read through the different narrative touch points of your brand, I think it's worth mentioning because you had mentioned about Donald Miller and Story Brand, which I admire. I think is a really, really solid program. And people ask me, "Oh, is this just a knockoff of Story Brand?" And the irony is that I have been doing the Story Cycle system 8 years before Story Brand even showed up. I was using it within our agency very specifically on our customer base. Their brilliance came when they said, "Hey, let's industrialize this and make it available to anyone." Theirs being more of a marketing tool versus really a deep dive story where it help you find your brand story and the elements in which you could then use to communicate your story in your content marketing and other places. That's the difference between Story Brand and the Story Cycle system, which guides the Story Cycle Genie, the only narrative native platform in the world that we are aware of that is driven by what I like to call artful intelligence. Not, we do use artificial to help you get there, but it only works if it is working in collaboration with you, the human storyteller.
Hmm. Well, I would also say the organizations I've worked with, and I've been blessed to work with Nike, Amazon, Zillow, Salesforce. I reference HubSpot, Nissan, Alaska Airlines, like big time companies. Um, Novartis, um, J&J. They're very few of them are getting storytelling training. The very few have like persuasive, influential storytelling for leadership, storytelling for sales, storytelling just as a public speaker when you would like for like C-suite. Very few have been exposed to anything. So if they're using Donald Miller, I say that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I'm not going to argue. Just infuse some personal development on what are the patterns of great stories, how to customize a story for your value proposition. What's your unique positioning? What is some social proof stories? How do you position the buyer customer into the story? Use something, but I found Park, there's very few doing it. And what's interesting, in December on LinkedIn, one of the number one words or job description
Yeah.
titles or desires in the corporate workplace in 2025 and 2026 is storytellers. So that's on LinkedIn has found like a top need today in business and leadership is storytelling. So if you're listening to this today, you probably see the value in the business of story. But what are you doing to evolve your skills, to evolve the way you teach it, how you and how you infuse it?
Yeah. All right, one last story element from the genie, and then we'll do a big wrap on this. And it comes down to the purpose statement, your brand purpose statement, which I kind of call the moral of the story. Why does all this matter? And the purpose statement comes down to why does Collin Henderson exist beyond making money? We all got to make money. But what is it you are doing that has the true impact in the world? And it reads, and I'd just love to get your take on this. Collin Henderson exists to free high achievers, athletes, sales leaders, executives, and entrepreneurs from the invisible psychological ceiling that has been the hidden tax on everything they have ever accomplished so they can finally experience what peak performance was always supposed to feel like. Not just results, but results with peace.
Yeah, I think that was the theme is perform with peace, like peak performance with peace. And I would say 100%. And that was summarized very well. But I have um, a mission statement, values, a purpose statement for my organization, Master Mindset. And my mission is to transform lives and normalize mindset training. Values are gratitude, giving, and growing. But my purpose statement is transfer my pain into your power through tools to be the best version of you. Now, power or peace, it's interesting. So I want to, it's interesting now that the word peace came up multiple times. So, but that's very, very similar.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's pulling from your website. And what you would do from here is just simply interact with the genie and tell it everything you just told me. And you would then collaborate with it to really fine tune and refine your brand story. I have never seen a brand story yet that is perfect in its writing. The genie just helps you get more of that refinement down to really carve out your niche in the world and speak your truth and become that single source of truth that you can then use and with your team and other people use to create all your on brand content. So it's kind of my last hurrah in storytelling. I've been doing this a long time and I kind of chuckle when they say storytelling now is like the hot term in a title. I'm like, I've been doing this for 25 years. And now it's just getting popular, or as some of my co-creators said, "Park, you're old. It's just getting popularized again. You've been through it for so long." So,
Hmm. It's
but it
true.
is powerful. I just love teaching it, and I really have enjoyed having a fellow Cougar on the show here. Collin, where can people learn more about you, get your great book, and when is your book actually publishing?
Yeah. It's published July 21st, where all books are found, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, may catch it in, in an airport, potentially wherever you're flying somewhere. But yeah, go to Amazon, just search Oz Method, Collin Henderson. There was a book that I wasn't aware of that was written in the 90s called The Oz Principle, a completely different book. I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram at Collin Henderson, two L's, and my website is thecollinhenderson.com. And we have some resources. There's an Oz assessment. There is a free storytelling chapter summary, and we love to serve.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here today. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, and go Cougs.
You know it. Go Cougs.